Ooh, yay! Oh, hey there! Oh, what? You thought I was gonna hug your face? Well, I'm not! Cause that'd be weird.
I know I'm not the only one who finds himself playing some video games at the end of the day to simply unwind and relax for a bit. But for some reason, I have a fascination of replaying older games when I'm stressed out instead of some newer ones fresh off the store. I guess it's got something to do with retreading through some good memories that I associate with the game, and the ability to shut off my brain and simply rely on my muscle memory to blaze past its challenges that I find to be oddly hypnotizing. But in all the times we might find ourselves replaying the Metroid games, haven't you ever found yourself wondering, why is it that there's almost always a self-destruct or escape sequence in these games? Or why Samus takes off her armor at the end of the adventure? Or even why the main series antagonist has such a weird name for a rather fearsome and gruesome character? I mean, all of these things might simply be considered traditions of the franchise at this point, but there must be a reason to where these ideas originally come from, right? At the end of the day, every story or idea has one or more sources of inspiration, but with how uptight Nintendo is in keeping its secrets, this can be a bit of a trouble to solve. Fortunately for us, one of Metroid's key creators and director, Yoshio Sakamoto, once stated in an interview shortly after the release of Zero Mission that, quote, "I think the film Alien had a huge influence on the production of the first Metroid game. All of the team members were affected by H.R. Giger's design work, and I think they were aware that such designs would be a good match for the Metroid world we had already put in place." So I think it's safe to say that Ridley Scott's 1979 horror film Alien had a big impact on the development team. And once you compare certain events from the game with the ones in the movie, the inspiration of certain key elements from the Metroid series start becoming a little bit more apparent. However, for the sake of simplicity with this video, I will be only looking at the similarities between the Metroid series with the original Alien film and its sequel Aliens, which was directed by James Cameron and released in 1986. Since these two films are more likely the ones to inspire a lot of the ideas of the original Metroid trilogy that were later reused for future games in the franchise. But before we begin, here's your obligatory spoiler warning for the first two Alien films. If for whatever reason you haven't seen these movies at this point and are remotely curious about them, I suggest you go watch the movies first and then come back to this video. Last thing I want to do is spoil one of my favorite films of all time to some potential newcomers, but with all that said, you've been warned. Spoilers ahead. So, where do we start drawing the comparisons between Alien and Metroid? Well, why not with their settings? Both media take place in a sci-fi universe where a tough female lead is trying to take down what seems to be an invincible, never-before-seen life form in a desolate place that once used to be a home of sorts to the protagonists, but now has become a desolate and hostile location that both are trying to escape from. And if anything, the ship that serves as the main location for the Alien film, the Nostromo, definitely inspired the idea of numerous abandoned space stations that host something dangerous in them that we see in the Metroid series, like the BSL station in Fusion, the frigate Orpheon in Prime, and most notably the Space Colony Ceres at the beginning of Super Metroid. For those of you who might not know, Ridley's name in the Metroid games is most likely a reference or homage to the director of the film, Sir Ridley Scott. And part of the space pirate's physical appearance could have been inspired by the iconic horror creature from the movie that is referred to at times as the Xenomorph. With their slender body, long limbs and head, the ability to spew out acid or plasma, and the iconic pointy tail that can easily stab their prey. On top of this, the Xenomorph's role also helped inspire certain traits seen on the titular Metroids. Both creatures originally come from an uncharted planet or moon and start their life cycle by hatching from an egg, and attack their prey by attaching themselves onto their victim's head, ultimately evolving into an unstoppable monster from which some members of each species have the ability to evolve into a queen that can sort of command other members of their group. But the similarities don't stop there, since the Nostromo has a built-in supercomputer known as Mother, that works as a sort of an artificial intelligence to help guide the crew on their journey, and this computer's name could have probably inspired the concept for Mother Brain as a character. After coming to terms with what they're dealing with, the Nostromo crew realize that they have no chance fighting the alien, as it's hunting them down one by one. and in a last-ditch effort to save themselves, the film's protagonist Ellen Ripley and her team decide to activate the ship's self-destruct mechanism and plan to escape via some smaller shuttles found aboard. And if this inspiration isn't obvious to you now, this tense and climactic moment in the film is what might have heavily inspired the many self-destruct sequences that are prevalent in the Metroid games. In fact, perhaps the reason to why Samus takes off her armor in some of the endings in the Metroid games could be a homage to the final moments in the film where Ripley takes off her clothes after successfully evacuating the Nostromo. And while Samus's design isn't directly inspired by that of Ellen Ripley's, I think certain aspects of her personality were transmitted onto the character, especially with her depiction on the 2004 Metroid manga, which as of today serves as Samus's canon backstory, since Yoshio Sakamoto was involved in its writing. But as mentioned, the similarities don't simply end with the first movie, as its sequel, Aliens, probably helped inspire the events of Metroid 2, Return of Samus, and its remake, Samus Returns. And this is none the more obvious than when you take a look at the plot for both stories. Aliens revolves around Ripley joining with a group of Marines being sent to the Xenomorph's home moon of LV-426 in order to check on a distress signal from a local space colony. But after their arrival, the characters find themselves encountering with a swarm of the aliens and now instead fight for their survival as they try to destroy the Xenomorph hive that has expanded over the moon's colony. And this plot is something that Metroid 2 almost completely borrowed to a T. After the events on planet Sebes, the Galactic Federation sent a group of Marines back to the uncharted planet SR-3D8 to conduct another research, but end up being overwhelmed by the dangerous Metroids. And fearing that another outbreak might occur, the Federation hires Samus to go down to the planet's caves and destroy all of the parasites. Beyond that, it's worth considering that in both sequels it's the first time that we're introduced to some sort of evolutionary hierarchy and life cycle for the deadly monsters, in the form of the Queen Xenomorph and the Queen Metroid, both of which are also capable of laying more eggs and find themselves buried deep within an intricate cave system. And it's these queens that are also featured as the final struggle to overcome for our protagonists, who later find themselves with a responsibility of taking care of an orphan child in need. Heck, even the new redesigns of the Zeta Metroids in Samus Returns make them look a lot like Xenomorphs. Not only physically, but with their ability to walk on walls and also being able to spit out acid. Seriously, the only thing this thing needs is to have an expandable tongue to get itself into some sort of a lawsuit. But then again, during the ending of Aliens, the movie has Ripley fight the Alien Queen while riding a cargo loader exosuit, which sends a lot of Metroid vibes when you take a step back to look at the bigger picture, although I doubt this was an intentional reference by Cameron and his crew to the classic Nintendo series. But before we end this video, here are a couple of other similarities that can be drawn between the two franchises. One of the most iconic sets in the original Alien film is when the Nostromo crew investigate the moon LV-426 and find themselves aboard what seems to be a spaceship with a fossilized creature in the middle, which at times is referred to as the Space Jockey. And it's perhaps this imagery that could in some way inspire the idea or design of the original Choso statues, especially those seen in Super Metroid when you take into account their updated posture. You know, in hindsight, this kinda makes a little more sense after watching Prometheus and Alien Covenant, especially considering what those movies showed to be what the Space Jockey actually was!
Just in time.
Speaking of the original film, when the character Kane is returned to the lab after being attacked by a facehugger, a fellow crewmate, Parker, suggests that they should freeze him in order to avoid any problems and tend to him once back on Earth, which in some way could have possibly inspired the idea of the Metroid's weakness to cold temperatures. Perhaps another happy coincidence is that the doors in the original Metroid Prime have a hexagonal shape, which could have been inspired by the hallways in the Nostromo that have the same form. I know it might be a bit of a stretch, but then again, the frigate Orpheon's environment heavily resembles a lot of that of the Nostromo that this could have probably been an intentional reference. Also, if anything, an early cutscene in Metroid Prime 2 features a group of Federation Marines being overrun by a swarm of aliens, which is similar to an event that happens in one of the movies. Oh, and I guess there's a slight similarity with the Federation cloning Metroids aboard the BSL station during the events of Fusion, that perhaps is a reference taken from how Burke was planning to smuggle Xenomorphs back to Earth to use as experiments to create some sort of bioweapon. And lastly, in the Metroid manga, Samus has a pet rabbit of sorts named Pionchi, who survives the space pirate raid on K2L. which could have probably been inspired by Ripley's cat Jones, who also survived the events that took place aboard the Nostromo. I know there are probably a ton of other similarities between the two franchises, but like I said in the beginning, I wanted to focus mostly on the first two films, since those took place before the release of the first couple of Metroid games, therefore having the biggest impact on their development cycle. In the end, even though Metroid initially had some heavy inspirations from the Alien films, that doesn't take away any of the franchise's polish, charm, creativity, or achievements, because in the creative world, everyone will ultimately draw some influence of other works of media, to use as a point of reference to guide their project into the right direction. But if there's something that we can learn from how the development team behind the original Metroid games used their inspiration, is that it's not enough with just copying the idea from something else, but you must give it a twist to make it your own. That way, not only will you be able to set yourself apart from your influences, but you will also create something unique that will have a different impact onto an audience that hopefully will also be inspired to create something with any talents that they have at their disposal. Hey guys, Albert from the Orpheon here with a short reminder before the credits that in case you missed it, I released a new line of shirts that you can get over on Redbubble featuring a couple of designs of your favorite characters, like Ridley, Samus, Elma, and even Dark Samus. On top of this, I am happy to announce that I have added a couple of new designs since the last video, based on some of the suggestions left by you guys over in the comments and my social media, like Silex, Weevil, Rundus, Gandreda, and Mother Brain, to name a few. But besides being shirts, you can also get these designs on other types of products like notebooks and art prints that you can hang on your wall. So if any of these designs pique your interest, then consider getting one of these products with the link in the description, and know that your contribution will help out the channel during these tough times. I really appreciate the support I receive from you guys, it's the main thing keeping me going, and as always, thanks for watching. Oh, and make sure you guys stay safe out there with the whole situation that's going on at the moment.